Hey class, Kris, Kerry, and I have put together a case study on confidentiality in ministry, and it's posted right above in a PDF. If you just want to go ahead and pull that down and read that before you continue with this video, you can go ahead and push pause. As we look into confidentiality, I think one thing we have to be on the same page about is that as pastors, we are looking out for people's dignity, and we got to make sure that their information stays in their hands and that it's not something that we're spreading around, and it's something that we give to them. We let them keep, we let them hold, and we work through it with them. And so that's the first thing. The second thing is the justice of the ministry that we hold. And so if people are not able to trust pastors, they're not going to be vulnerable with pastors, and so we want to give them the opportunity to be vulnerable with us. And then the fidelity of it all, that comes right out of, these three things come right out of the book that Gula wrote. And basically we want to be able to allow people to trust us, and to trust us with their personal information, trust us with their lives. We want to engage people in relationship as pastors. I believe that's where people are going to be changed. It's not just from the sermons, from the pulpit. It's not in the classes. It's going to be when we're engaging them in real life. And so I believe we need to move forward together with that assumption, and then I think we can have an interesting conversation based on it. When considering confidentiality in ministry, it's an interesting thing, because us as pastors, we have that dual relationship with everybody that we're involved with in the ministry. And so we're moving forward with that understanding that we're not just counselors, we're pastors. And as pastors, we're going to interact with people in casual settings where they're going to tell us confidential things. We're going to interact with people in confidential settings, and we'll have the urge to use that information in order to help them grow and become closer disciples of Christ. And so we want to address some of those things in this presentation that's going to be set in front of you today. Confidentiality, I think a big question we have to think about, maybe one of the biggest questions we have to think about, is what is our primary responsibility to our people? If we're primarily counselors to people, then I believe it makes our job much easier. There's clear-cut guidelines for how a counselor is supposed to deal with confidentiality. But our group, we have a different assumption, and our assumption is that scriptures tell pastors that the first responsibility that they have for their people is to disciple them, to help them grow to become more like Christ, and then to help others grow to become more like Christ. And so our first question for you that we're going to list below as well is, do you believe with our, do you agree with us about our assumption? Do you agree that the pastor's first primary job and role and responsibility to their people is to make disciples? Go ahead and interact with us there. Next, now starting with that assumption, we have to decide how we interact with people. If we're supposed to make disciples, then I believe people have to interact with a greater percentage of the church than just the pastors. They have to lean into community. It takes the whole church to grow disciples. It's not just the pastor, because the pastor doesn't have enough time to create a church full of disciples. And so obviously Jesus just invested in 12. And so how can the pastor help counseling clients, counseling people that come into the church for counseling, lean into the community at large, lean to the church for help, and to come into different settings with vulnerability? One of the things that we'd like to suggest, and we'd like to hear your interaction with, is helping, as part of our counseling, helping people come to terms with where they're at, and to become vulnerable with that information with other people, helping them find the right people first off, because obviously we don't want them to be sharing all information with all people. They should be sharing the right information with the right people. But how can we encourage, as pastors, encourage people to move and take those steps towards sharing the right information with the right people in order to lean into community and become better and deeper disciples in Christ? Go ahead and interact with that question down below. I know I brought up the idea of dual relationships earlier, but we wanted to address it more fully. As pastors, we are dealing with people in multiple situations, not just in counseling settings. We have to deal with dual relationships in such a way that it's pretty clean cut for counselors and medical professionals. They know exactly how to deal with things. And so for us, we're dealing with confidential issues in much more difficult terms. We're talking to people in formal and informal settings. And so that brings a lot of issues into our dealing with confidential subjects. And so people like Pat might come to me when we're at a youth event right after everybody's left, and might start talking to me about the situation that we'd earlier talked about in a counseling setting. Or we might be out to lunch because Pat and I are friends, and Pat tells me about the thing that they had done the night before. And so I've got content that has been given to me that I have to figure out what to do with. And so Gula suggests that we look at the what, the way, and the context in which we receive information. So what he's talking about there is it the what is what kind of content is it? Is it content that people are willing to share with multiple people? Do you see them talking about it when others are around, or is it just when it's you? And so you have to weigh those things. You have to weigh the what, the type of content. Do you hear other people talking about that content? Did Pat tell just me, or was it other people? And so the why are people telling you this? Do you feel like they're telling you? Do I feel like Pat's telling me what has happened the night before because Pat wants help with it? Or is it just a general information type of thing? Is it to get to know each other better? What is the reason why they're giving you the information they're giving you? And then the context. The context has a lot to do with the confidentiality, whether or not it's confidential, the information. And so are you, like the situation with Pat, standing there after a youth event where you're the only two left in the building, and Pat's telling you one-on-one what's going on in his life? Is that the situation that's happening? And if so, it's probably more confidential information than if you were standing out there in front of all the kids during one of the games and Pat's telling you what happened the night before. If that's the context, if the context is a public setting with many people around and many ears, then it's probably less confidential. And so we have to use our discernment, our judgment, I think. In these settings, as Christians, we should pray for God to give us good discernment and to help us to use our judgment. And so we have some questions for you on this subject and this topic, and they're just going to be right below. So go ahead and interact with Kerry and Kris and I. Really thank you for taking a few minutes to watch this video. Just go ahead and interact with those discussion questions down below, and we'll respond to those, and we look forward to the conversation that this class is going to bring to the discussion of confidentiality in pastoral care. You have a great day.